Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is daf mem bet of Bava Basra. We are near the bottom at the two dots on mem aleph amud bet. I'm going to share my screen and we will get really started. We again remain in the third parak of Bava Basra. We're continuing our discussion of chazaka, where the presence for a certain amount of time can serve as evidence that supports a valid claim in the place of a deed/contract. So you no longer have direct evidence of your ownership of a piece of property. So indirect evidence can replace it if you have the combination of a legitimate justification for being there together with being there for a certain amount of time. So as we pick up at the two dots on the fifth line from the bottom of Mem Aleph Hamabet, the Gemara is going to address whether one can combine the times that different people were on the land to create a chazaka. And if yes, what are the limitations to that? So let's take a look. Shlosha lekuchos mitztarfin. Three different purchasers can combine. Rashbam really helps us out here. Shlosha lekuchos, it's 5, 10, 14 or so lines up from the bottom of Mem Aleph a bet in the Rashbam at the bottom. Sadeh sheyesh edim shahaisa shel Ruvain kol hayamim. That if you have a field that Ruvain has witnesses that it used to belong to him for a long time, v'hichzik ba Shimon, and then Shimon was in it shana for 1 year. Kitoen shekana Ruvain, and he claims that he purchased it from Ruvain. Shimon Levi b'shtar, and then Shimon sold it to Levi with a contract. Note that we don't know what happened between Ruvain and Shimon. We know that Shimon, it was there for a year, but we don't know what happened. But now Shimon sold it to Levi with a contract. The Hichzik Levi Shana, and Levi was there for a year. And similarly, Levi sold it to Yehuda and sold it to him with a star, Kidla Kaman, as we will explain momentarily. The Hichzik Bashana, and now he was there for a year. So we had Shimon 1 year, Levi 1 year, Yehuda 1 year. Hare Shalosh Shanim. That's 3 years. V'asa Ruvain. Now Ruvain comes the Kama'arer and he complains. The Omer Kilo Machra LaShimon. He never sold it to Shimon. The Yehudon Toain, and Yehuda on the other hand claims Hare Hechzikanu. We have a group Chazaka Bein Shlosh Tenu among the three of us. Shalosh Shanim of 3 years. V'lo Machiza, and you never complained. The Shimon Shalakha Mimcha. Sha'anu ba'in mikocho, and when it comes to Shimon, who bought it from you and whose strength we are relying on, lo haya lo lizaher b'shtar yoter migimel shanim. He had no need to hold on to the star for more than 3 years. The Ruvain meshiv, and now Ruvain responds, lefisha kol echad mikem lo hichzik shalosh shanim. I didn't bother to complain because none of you three were there for 3 years. Elashana, you were only there for 1 year. So lo chashti limchot. I didn't think to complain. I didn't feel I needed to complain. Shahayiti ro'esh sha'atem yireim lahachzik. Because it seemed to me like you guys were afraid to make a chazaka. Kedemaksiki inshi, as people ordinarily would do, meaning by staying there for 3 full years. V'lo hayita yodeya shebishvil shahayita mochrim zelazeh l'sov shana lefikach lo hechzaktem kol echad ki'im shana. That I didn't realize that, I didn't know that it's based on this contract that you guys each signed that you would have this group chazaka. And yet, nonetheless, mitztarfin, they actually do get a chazaka, and the Rashbam continues. We'll continue with the next Rashbam. Halakuchos, meaning the buyers grouped together can can add themselves to total up to the 3 years. The Yafsid Ruvain, and Ruvain will end up losing. The Kavan, the Bishtar, Lachuzamizah, that as we'll see, that because a contract was the basis for Levi's acquisition from Shimon and Yehuda's acquisition from Levi, as we're going to explain. Rav B'samach as Rav will explain momentarily, Edim shebishtar afku l'kala, that when you have the witnesses on the contract, they will create a voice to the contract. The Yada Reuven, and Reuven should know that there was a contract. Umidulo Micha, and now that he did not bother to complain, Hifsid, he's going to lose out. Aval below shtar, if there had not been a contract between Shimon and Levi and Yehuda, well, then Matzitai, and then he would have the right to complain. Hi Delo Machai, that the reason that he didn't complain was Shalo Hichzik Echad Mikem Shalo Shanim, because none of you were there for 3 years. Below Achzakisu Kedimaxaki Inchi, and you didn't try to make a chazaka like normal people try to make a chazaka. Kedamrin and Le'el Be'amta, when we, like in the case that we dealt with earlier on Kaftet Amabet.
David, which rabbi, famous rabbi?
We're going to have a lot of Rashbam today. We're going to walk through. Rashbam's going to really help us out. So that is the story. And we say that even though you need to have 3 people, you ordinarily, you need 1 person to be there for 3 years. You can even have 3 people there each for 1 year.
As long as it's second and third.
Exactly. And let's take a look and see that inside.
But Reuven,
let's just finish it. Let me just finish
that he
this next line.
says that
Let's
Reuven
just finish the
knows.
next line. Let's just finish the next line. Amarav v'kulam b'shtar. And the requirement is that they all need to shtar. And of course, when we say kulam b'shtar, we have to clarify. Kulan b'shtar, take a look at the Rashbam, 6 lines up. Ashnelu kulchos achronim. It's referring to the last 2 acquisitions. Avalokech rishon shalakach min ha'arer, the one who's bought it from the person who's now complaining. Malan l'shtar. It doesn't make a difference whether he has a star, because the im yesh lo shtar pshita de ein yachal ara. Because of course, if he still has that contract, if Shimon has that contract, there wouldn't be any basis to argue at all, because then it would be completely clear that Yehuda would own it. Okay, so now Ken, you had a question.
Well, as we read in the Rashbam saw year after year that there was another person as now, and he didn't say anything. It's a little bit odd. He says, I saw you there, but you were there for only 1 year, and I saw you there so why didn't he say anything why didn't he say, what are you, Levi, what are you doing on my land? Yehuda,
Yeah,
what are you doing on my land?
Well, again, we can deal with a situation where maybe the person was very wealthy and he had lots of lands, and so as a result, he wanted, okay, so the land gets used. I'm not going to be able to plant it. I don't have the resources to plant it right now by myself. So good. So I wasn't able to find a sharecropper to take over and help, so facilitate. So I'd rather have it do something than have it do nothing. So maybe that was his thinking. But the bottom line is that he might have thought, and again, the Rashbam makes it clear that Reuven thought that, hey, maybe I don't have to complain, because maybe I only have to complain when 1 person is there for 3 years. But if in fact the acts of the occupants are such that it shows a clear sign of ownership, such as where they sign a contract from one to the next, then that gives a sufficient voice that we say to Reuven, no, listen, you saw that you heard that there was an actual contract. And so as a result, because you heard that there was an actual contract, we're going to connect the different acquisitions together. So Lememra, so now.
So what, for him to say, as you just said, well, no 1 person was there for 3 years. Once 3 years, if he waits till 3 years and a day, it's too late for him to complain. He would have to calculate, he'd have to wait till the maximum a day before 3 years. Right?
Now, well, 2 things. One, not if each of those are not summed together. So if instead.
No, but he was saying, right. But instead of saying, okay, 1 person's there, okay, I didn't have time to do it. I didn't have the plow and so forth, as you were just mentioning. But he said, okay, I can wait for 3. You're not there for 3 years, but once that person is there for 3 years, he can't complain anymore.
Correct. But there was never 1 person there. It changed every year. And so as a result, he might have thought that I don't have to worry. It's the clock starts all over again. And the answer is the clock will start all over again if there isn't an affirmative contract between the first person and the second person and the second person and the third person. But once you have a real contract, a written contract with witnesses, then we're going to say that that's just that makes it very clear that it's that there's a real thing here. Now we're going to now question why Rav's limited it to a written contract, a shtar. Why isn't it enough to have witnesses? So let's take a look and we'll see the question that the Gemara is going to ask. So Lumemer Desava Rab, shtar isle kala, ve'edim leislo kala. Right? The implication is that a contract would work, but and because it creates a voice, meaning it's publicly known, whereas witnesses alone without a contract would not be publicly known.
So I'm sorry, but that was going to be my question. The next question, that a shtar is a call. So doesn't Ruvain know if a shtar is a call and it's announced in Beit Din, doesn't he know that the shtar took place between Reuven and Levi?
Yes, exactly.
I mean,
that's
Laban
why.
and Shimon and Levi, and he
Correct.
got nothing to talk about even after year one.
No. Only after year 3. Remember, the contract doesn't exist. The contract is no longer available between Reuven and Shimon. So because Shimon,
You mean Shimon and Levi?
no, Reuven and Shimon.
Then, well, we don't even know there was a contract between
Yes,
them.
exactly. That's the point. Shimon and Levi have their contract, and they
Right.
need to have their contract because remember, Levi.
But doesn't Rob know about that because it was in Beit Din? There was a call. Doesn't he know there was a contract between?
Yes, Reuven does know about that. That's exactly the point. That's why Reuven is stuck if he doesn't complain within the 3 years. That's exactly right. Reuven's stuck if he doesn't complain within the 3 years. And remember that both Levi and Yehuda need to hold on to their contracts because those contracts are not 3 years old yet. So as a result, they would actually need to hold their contracts and be able to present them at the time of the Beis Din. Okay, so the Amar.
Why doesn't Rob say? Why doesn't he say? Reuven say? Wait a second. There's a call in the Levi. I'm saying Shimon and Levi. You sold this. It's on my land. What right do you have to create a contract on my land?
Yes, that's exactly right. He should have said that, and because he didn't, he's going to lose. Now, even even within 2 years, maybe if let's say he complains after 2 years, that's still legitimate. He has the right to complain because even though there was this contract between Reuven and between Shimon and Levi, that's not enough. There wasn't 3 years there because we don't have any proof that Shimon had a contract.
Without the contract, he would succeed because it's only been 2 years.
Right, but I'm saying that even though there was a contract between Shimon and Levi, you might think that, as Ken is suggesting right now, that maybe Reuven needs to complain immediately. Maybe that's such a public act that Reuven would need to complain immediately or he would lose. So no, not necessarily, again, because Shimon doesn't have his contract and it's within the first 3 years. So as a result, even Levi's contract to buy it from Shimon is not enough to sort of overcome the absence that Shimon from the fact that Shimon doesn't have the contract. But now the Gemara asks a question. It seems to say that Rava is saying that only a contract would have a voice and become publicly known, but Edim alone would not be publicly known. But listen to what Rav said elsewhere. V'ha'amar hamocher sadeh be'edim gova min nechasim mishubadim. That if you sell a field in front of witnesses and you give the buyer a guarantee, and now a creditor comes and takes away that land, that guarantor, the one who received the guarantee, has the right to go and take away land from someone else who bought land from you after you sold this land to that person, even though there's no written contract. It's only an oral contract. So that shows that an oral contract also has a voice. So doesn't that, right? So why don't we allow even an oral contract between Shimon and Levi and Yehuda to be valid and say that as long as there are witnesses to that contract, there'll be a voice.
What was that case again? They say it was a little complicated. Too many people.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of people, so let's go through it slowly, okay? So Reuven so again, we're now going to deal with different people. So Adam borrowed money from Cain. Cain, okay, and Adam then sells a piece of property with witnesses to Hevel. All right, and now Cain comes to take and sells it with a guarantee. Then after Adam sells property to Hevel, he sells another piece of property to Lemech. So now Cain comes and says, I want to collect Adam from my debt that you owe me. Well, Adam doesn't have anything, so he goes to Hevel and says, okay, I'm going to collect this land from you because I lent money to Adam on a contract before you bought. Well, I have a lien on the land. So he takes the land away from Hevel. Now, even though Hevel bought that land only with witnesses and with a guarantee, but even though it's only witnesses, Lemech is required to effectively know that this land exists and that it was sold with a guarantee. And so as a result, when Hevel now comes to collect the land from Lemech, Lemech is going to lose and Hevel is going to be able to take that land because that land was sold to Lemech by Adam only after Adam sold the land to Hevel. Okay, so that's the situation. And the point is that we say that we require Lemech to know about it because there were witnesses. And so as a result, it's a public sale. So a public sale, we're going to attribute that. So the answer is exactly what you might have thought. Hasam lekuchos. As we turn to Mem Bet Amud Aleph, Inu Afsidu Avnafshayu. So the point is when we have it as a purchase, then the person has brought the loss on himself, meaning Lemech in our situation needed to do an investigation. Let's take a look in the Rashbam at the top. Deshadu Zuzaihu, that he's throwing, again, top Rashbam, he's throwing away his money, bichdi, for no value. Shahaya lahem lachkor, because Lemech, in the example that I gave, should have investigated Yafeb very well. Imachar shum karka ba'achrayus. If Adam had sold any other land beforehand with some kind of guarantee. Velo asu, and he didn't do so. Lefikach hefsido. Therefore, we're going to cause him to lose the money associated with it. Of course, the other way to view it is that he knew about it, and therefore he paid a relatively lower price because of it, because he was taking that into account. Aval gabi shalosh lekuchos. But in the case of our three purchasers, ein lahafsid hama'arer. We don't want the complainer, the original owner, to lose. The kevan deleka shtar b'mechirot halalu, because there was no contract between Shimon and Levi, or Levi and Yehuda. V'lo yatsa kola. Hakol, the news about that contract did not go out. Mimela on its own. Lo haya lo lakor, and he doesn't have an obligation to investigate because it's his land. Remember, from Reuven's perspective, these are all squatters. Dememar Amar, that so because after all, why should he say? He would say Lafisha Yereim Lahachsuk Bakarka. It seems to me, and it's reasonable for me to assume that these people are afraid to stay on my land for 3 years. Bakarka Shali Lo Achalua Kol Echad Shalosh Shanim, right? Because as long as one of them isn't there for 3 years, and there isn't this voice that goes out based on the contract, so as a result, that's why we're going to differentiate between the two things. Okay. Umi Amar Rav Hachi. Now, did really Rav say this? As we pick up again, top line on Mem Bet Amud Aleph. Let's take a look in the Rashbam, second line of the narrow lines. Mechirat karka be'achrayus be'edim below shtar gova halokeach. Do we really say that in the example that I gave, where Lemech bought the property with a guarantee that Hevel bought the property with a guarantee that he's going to be able to take it away from Lemech, when Hevel, when Cain takes the land from him, he's going to be able to take it, he's going to be able to take it away from other mortgage property, namely the property that Lemech bought. So is that really true? Because Vahatanan, we have in a Mishnah that we will see way down in on Kuf Ayin Hay, that the following. Listen to the following case. Hamal ve'eschabero bishtar. If you lend money to your friend on with a contract, well, then govim nechasim mishubadim. You have the right to collect from encumbered properties, meaning any real estate that is sold after the date of your loan will be allowed to be collected from. Al yedei edim. But if in fact, okay, but period. Al yedei edim. If on the other hand you don't have a contract, but you have only witnesses that you made the loan, govim nechasim b'nei chorin, then you can only collect from available property, meaning you don't have the right to go to some later purchaser of property and take it away, because your loan is an oral loan, even though you have witnesses. So given the fact that you cannot collect for an oral loan, doesn't that suggest that you shouldn't be able to collect in the situation where, hold on, and we'll finish it up, where Hevel has bought the land with an oral purchase? So why are we differentiating between the two? So it seems like it should be the same rule, namely that it shouldn't have a voice. Okay, now what's your question?
You said Lemech had to give up his land because he should have done an investigation.
Right.
If the star was an oral one, what does that matter whether he should have done an investigation or not?
So the point is the question is we're differentiating between, in this case, it's a loan, right? So the question is if instead of Adam selling the first piece of property to Hevel and the second piece of property to Lemech, now he's made an oral loan to Hevel and is sold the property to Lemech. And the point is that we're saying that in that situation, Hevel doesn't have the right to go to Lemech. Okay,
because
so
it's the first one that's oral. Okay,
it's exactly. It's not Lemech's purchase that's oral. Exactly. The chitema.
So wait. So, but the beginning of the case was Adam borrowed money from Cain, right?
Correct. Adam borrowed money,
and then he sold
land first to Hevel,
so
and then
Cain comes back and says, "I want my money back." Right?
Correct. And so he
but Adam sold land. Doesn't he have money from the land to pay back Cain?
No.
What did he do with the money?
He used it all. He used it all. That is, unfortunately, he used it all. He ran, he tried the business venture and it wasn't successful.
Wow.
So so Cain now wants the land.
So exactly. So Cain takes the land from Hevel, and now Hevel wants his guarantee made up, so he takes the land from Lemech. Now the issue is,
but what's the connection between Lemech and Cain? They're two separate pieces of land.
Correct. But the point is that if I sell you land and then and with a guarantee, and then I sell land to Moshe with with or without a guarantee, and now James collecting a loan again that I borrowed from him, he now comes and collects from you. You have the right to go to Moshe's property, because essentially Moshe's property was mortgaged to you to fulfill the guarantee that I promised you. So that's the connection. Okay. Now, the issue is that if instead of you being a purchaser of property, you were a different lender, okay, and we could ignore James now, and you were just a lender, it's just you, Ken, and Moshe, and I borrowed $1,000 from you, and then I sold $1,000 piece of property to Moshe, and now I ran out of the money, so now you can have the right to collect that land if you sold me, if you did the loan on a star, on a document, well, then you would be able to collect that land from Moshe. But if you don't have a document, even if you had witnesses that I borrowed the money from you, you would not be able to. So that's different from if you were a purchaser of property. When you're a purchaser of a property, Rav says that you have the right to go and collect from Moshe. But when you're not a purchaser of property, when you're just a lender, you don't have a right to connect. And so that's the question that the Gemara is asking.
But how can he collect property that was sold in a different transaction? That's got nothing to do with him.
No, that the answer is that if
You have a
if
lien on
the is you have a lien on it. As soon as you bought the first piece of property, or as soon as you make a loan to the seller that's written down, you have an immediate mortgage on all property that they own. And so as a result, if I, as the borrower, try to sell it to try and, to make money and etc., to try and then I lose the money that I buy, or I use the money to live for my living expenses, you have the right to go to any of the purchasers of land who purchase land after the date of your loan. That's an important qualification. After the date of the purchase of your loan, after the date of you made your loan, of the contract of your loan, so then you have the right to collect from those purchasers of land, because you have a guarantee. Exactly. You have a guarantee.
Guarantee on what? The loan.
On the loan, exactly. Exactly. If it's, well, it depends. Either it's a guarantee on the written loan, or it's a guarantee on the sold property that I sold you. Either way, you'd have that right. But what's different is that when it comes to real property, Rav says that the sale could even be oral, as long as there are witnesses. But when it comes to a loan, the loan has to be written. In fact, the Mishnah says that the loan has to be written. So doesn't that seem to contradict Rav's statement that the sale could be oral and yet you still would get that guarantee? That's the question. V'chitema Rav Tanu hu upalig, back into the Gemara, fourth line down. And if you want to say, well, 1 second, Rav is a special case because he was living at the very beginning of the age of the Amoraim, and as a result, he had the ability to argue with Tanaim, v'ha Rav u'Shmuel. But the problem is that if you take a look at a statement where Rav and Shmuel agree, you're going to see that, in fact, he agrees with that Mishnah. So you can't say that he disagrees with the principle of that Mishnah. V'ha Rav u'Shmuel da'amri tarvayu malva al peh. If you loan orally, Ein agova lo min yorshim v'lo min alakuchos. You can't collect from heirs, and you can't collect from purchasers of real property. So as a result, it's showing that he totally agrees with that Mishnah that we're going to learn on Daf Kuf Ayin Hey. So how do we answer it? Naturally, we're going to answer it. Milva azvina karamis. You're trying to raise a question by contrasting loans with sales. When it comes to a milva, kika yazif, that when somebody borrows, bitsina kayazif, people borrow secretly. I'm not going to publicize my fact that I borrowed money from you, Ken, because I don't want when I then go and sell my property to Moshe, I don't want Moshe to think that I'm engaged in a fire sale. So because I don't want my other properties to lose value, because people are going to assume that I'm going to need to sell them. But if in fact I'm going to sell you my property, Ken, then mandezabin arab bifar hesyazabin, I'm going to make that sale as public as possible, because until I close on that sale, if somebody else were to come and offer me more money, I can go with them. So I want that there to be a voice to it. And so as a result, that's why we're going to differentiate between these two cases. So when Ken purchases my property in an oral contract with witnesses, so then when I make a later sale to Moshe is obligated to know that I made that earlier sale. And so his purchase is going to be subject to the fact that Ken, if he gets his land taken away by some lender of mine, so then I am going to, then he will lose his land when Ken tries to claim it to cover his guarantee. But if Ken is a lender, well, then when I'm borrowing money, I'm going to be very quiet about it. And now we're not going to attribute to Moshe the requirement that he know about it. And so that's the explanation. So we're going to we just basically covered the Rashbam outside. So now we'll continue on with the next piece. So now the Gemara asks the following.
In either case, there's a sale, right?
No, we're differentiating between, well,
but you're
there
saying
is
the
a
loan, then he
sale.
sells the
There's the
property.
last person, hold on. The last person, let me answer your question. The last person is always a sale. The question is the person before the last person, was that a sale or a loan?
Right.
Okay,
So that's the difference. There was a loan initially in one
correct.
case, and in the second case, there was no loan. It was
Well,
just a
the
sale.
first case,
Loan sale or
it's
loan sale sale.
right. The question is right, exactly. Loans. Well, it's really loan and then sale, or
Right.
loan sale. Those are the two cases. Was there a loan and then a sale, or was there a loan and then one sale and then another sale? So if there was three transactions and the middle transaction was oral but with witnesses, and it was a sale transaction, so then we're going to say that the middle person has the right to claim from the last person. But if in fact you have just a loan and a sale, then the loan has to be written in order to be able to collect from the sale person, from the last person.
Why not? Why not just say there was a sale and a sale without a loan in the other scenario?
Well, you need some kind of basis for somebody to have taken the property away from the person who made the first purchase of property.
Always comes with price, even if it's oral.
The sale. We mean. Oh, 1 second. You're saying
It's a loan oral sale and then written sale.
right? So an oral sale, you have to explicitly say that there's achrayas. If there, I think, I'm not 100% sure. I think that you need to make it explicit. If it's a written sale, then it effectively automatically comes with achrayas.
An oral loan never has achrayas.
And an oral line never has achrayas, even if you try to give it achrayas. Okay.
So one case has a loan and a sale.
Correct. A loan and a sale. And then the question is the loan an oral loan or a written loan? And the other case is a loan sale. And the point is that even though the middle sale was done orally, if there was a guarantee associated with it, we're going to say that the guarantee is sufficient to allow the middle purchaser, the middle transaction, the other party in the middle transaction, to go and collect from the third party.
From the first party.
No, the third party. The third in time.
Right.
The third in time. Okay. So all right. So now Tana Rabbanan. So now we're going to have a brisa that supports the principle of three people together getting a chazaka. So let's take a look. So Tana Rabbanan, Achla ha'av shana. A father eats 1 year. Va'ben shtayim, and a son eats for 2 more years. Va'av shtayim, or a father eats 2 years. Va'ben shana, and the son eats for 1 year. Va'av shana, va'ben shana, va'lokeach shana. Or we have 3 purchasers, 3 people. One, the property of the father, then the son, and then the purchaser are each using it for a year. In that situation, in any of these 3 situations, hare zu chazaka. Each of them they together get a chazaka. So lamemra de lokeach isle kala. Well, this shows that a purchaser has a voice. That there's a voice to it. So uraminu. But 1 second, what about the following brisa that seems to suggest that there's not a voice? Because listen to the following. We're going to reverse all of the cases. So now the father and the son are the original owners. So let's take a look. Uraminu, achla b'fnei ha'av shana, ub'fnei ha'ben shtayim, b'fnei ha'av shtayim, ub'fnei ha'ben shana. If the father, if you, the purchaser, or arguable purchase, you claiming purchase, have it in front of the father for 1 year and the son for 2 years, or the father for 2 years and the son for 1 year, or in front of bifnei ha'av shana, bifnei ha'ben shana, ubifnei lokeach shana, or you have it in front of the father for a year, the son for a year, and a purchaser for a year. Well, then hare zu chazaka. So then it seems to be a chazaka. Now, be'isal kadaitek lokeach hi isla kala. Now, if you're going to tell me that when somebody purchases land, that there is a public knowledge to it, why in that last case, where it was in front of the father for a year, in front of the son for a year, and then the son sells it, why is that considered a good chazaka? Ein lecha mecha gedola mizu. What could be a bigger mecha to say that Ken, the current occupant of this land, don't really own it if I go ahead and I sell that land to somebody else? right? So Rav Papa explains, no, that the situation where the son sold the land, Kitanya Hahi, in that brisa, b'mocher sdosav stam. It's where he sold all of the fields without specifying them. So if I say that I'm selling, if somebody says, somebody whose father has passed away and left him some fields says, I'm selling you all my father's fields that I have, well, then that doesn't tell us for sure that he's also selling the field that he got from his father that the squatter is on, because maybe the squatter really did purchase it and he's just selling the remaining fields of his father. So that's the explanation. And so as a result, the bottom line is that we have a couple of principles. Principle number one is that we can't, let me say the principles and then you can ask your question. The principle number one is that if you have a number of people, they can work together to have a chazakah. Not only that, but if you have a number of different people who said that they were the owners and have some evidence of it, you can also have a chazakah against a number of different people. You don't have to be a one situation. In addition, we have the following. When you have a sale between them, and of course, this is actually necessary if you want to have three people add together, that sale needs to be written, because a written sale will have a voice. But an oral sale will not have the voice. Nonetheless, even though an oral sale doesn't have a full voice, if in fact you have a later purchaser of other property, that later purchaser of other property is going to be assigned knowledge of an oral, of a previous oral sale of land from the same seller. And so as a result, that earlier sale could, which if it's subject to a guarantee, could result in the earlier purchaser taking away property from the later purchaser.
Oral sales cannot combine for the chazakah.
But they can, but
they do support
taking away property from a later purchaser. Exactly.
So who wins then?
It depends which story we're talking about. If we're talking about a story where everybody sold, bought the land with a contract, then the people with the contract are going to win. Okay, Ken, you have a question?
Yeah, in the last case here, the last situation, there's a lokeach, right? He says, and we say, Sidotav Stam. So who is making the macha'ah here?
So the person who's making the macha'ah is the person who purchased it stam. So again, we'll deal with you give some names, okay? So
purchased it stam, but from whom did he purchase it?
He purchased it from the son. So we're gonna have Abraham was there for Ken, you'll be the squatter. Oh, I'll be the squatter. So I'm the squatter. Okay. And now the property belonged to Abraham. Abraham gave it to his son as a Yerusha when he passed away after 175 years to Yitzchak. Yitzchak then sold it to Moshe. Okay. And now Moshe comes and says and complains that I'm on the that I've been squatting on the land. But I say, I purchased it from Abraham, and I've been here for 3 years. So even though Moshe had a purchase from Yitzchak, because that purchase did not specifically mention this particular property, it only mentioned that Yitzchak was selling all of the property that he got from Abraham, or all the property that he still owned from Abraham. That is no longer that isn't enough for Moshe to be able to take the land away from me.
So there was a separate squatter on this land.
Yes, I'm the squatter. Exactly. I'm on the land. Exactly. That's the whole case there's a
you were there for 3 years and
3 years
had it for 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
You could say Abraham knew about me being here for 2 years and you get the land.
Correct. Exactly. The point is that
had no knowledge, only knows about it for 1 year.
That's exactly right. So again, the 3 different cases in the brisa, so we'll go through them, right? The case number 1 is that Abraham owned it for 1 year while I was squatting, and Yitzchak owned it for 2 years. or Abraham owned it for 2 years while I was squatting, and Yitzchak owned it for 1 year, or Abraham owned it for 1 year, Yitzchak owned it for 1 year, and Moshe owned it for 1 year. And in all three of those situations, because I was there squatting on it, and my claim is that I bought it from Abraham, I am going to be the winner.
Without any proof?
Without any additional proof. All I have to do is bring the proof that I was there for 3 years. And now it makes sense. I lost the contract, because why should I hold on to the contract after 3 years? I don't need to hold the deed.
So we'll get the
As soon as
contract.
someone inherits the land, they need to check for
Right.
squatters.
That's right, 100%. They need to check for
There, who
squatters.
gets the
Exactly.
contract?
So, well, I'm going to win, and I'm going to be able to sell it to whoever I want in that
So
situation.
it'd be 2 years and
Correct.
51
Now,
weeks.
again, if Yitzchak had sold the property to Moshe, saying that I'm selling this property, the property that I'm on, well, now all of a sudden that's a mecha. That now I need to still hold on to my contract, because I am required to know about the sale that Yitzchak made to Moshe. And as a result, when I see that sale, that tells me, David, you better hold on to your contract from Abraham, because if you don't hold on to your contract, you're going to lose, because somebody has complained within the 3 years that I was on the land, the first 3 years that I was on the land.
Contract is like a complaint.
Correct. Exactly. A new contract is like a complaint. That's exactly right. A new written contract is like a
But
complaint.
Avram could hold it for he was about to complain, then he died. It was 2 years and 51 weeks.
Correct.
Yitzchak inherits it, he only has a week to.
Correct. He only has a week to do anything, and if he doesn't, then it's tough luck. Exactly. Exactly. Again, the key is that I'm on the land during Abraham's life. Okay.
So who's making the macha'ah here? The last person who
The last person,
who
exactly. The
purchased
son
it?
or the purchaser from the son is making the macha here.
Right. Okay.
Okay. All right. Now we're going to change topics a little bit and say what are who cannot get a chazaka. This mission is a little confusing because we are going to mix different kinds of chazakas. There's the chazaka of 3 years on property,
Wow.
but then there's a chazaka as if I'm holding my tefillin, I'm assumed to be the owner of my tefillin. If James is holding my tefillin, it's assumed that James is the owner of my tefillin, and I sold it to him. So we're going to combine both of those kinds of chazaka. And at the very end of this Mishnah, we're going to talk about how you make an acquisition kind of chazaka. So there are 3 kinds of different chazakas that we're going to be referencing in this Mishnah. So be careful as we go through. So ha'umanim, if you have a craftsman, and Rashbam explains that they're dealing with people that you bring their objects to. So specifically, Rashbam notes that you bring your items to the craftsman's home, and he's going to fix it. So it includes people like somebody who puts dyes in objects, a laundromat, a tailor, a garment comber who's going to soften your garments to make them nice and comfortable. All of those people, if they claim that the object that you gave them was purchased by them, they are not going to have a chazaka. It's assumed that they were given the object in order to work on it, not to take away. Vashutafin, partners also don't have the right to claim that the other partner sold them the piece of property just with a chazaka. There we're talking about a 3-year chazaka. Arisin, sharecroppers, similarly a 3-year chazaka. If they go into the land and are splitting the land, the profits of the land, and then they say, oh, well, I was here for 3 years, I really own this land. No, sorry, you don't get that right. Apotropin, people who are guardians, also, or administrators, people who, are watching over the property of somebody, whether it's somebody who's an adult, often it's a minor. Ein lahem chazaka. Again, none of them can get a chazaka. Okay.
You can leave your item with the dry cleaner for 3 years.
Well, and remember, an item that is left with the dry cleaner, technically 1 day is enough, right? If I leave my tefillin with you, right, you have the right to say I sold you, and you'll be believed to say I bought your tefillin,
Wow.
right?
No, only in the chazaka.
Right. Well, my point is that you don't have, it's not even 3 years that you have to worry about. Even 1 day, they would have the potential to make the claim. Meaning,
Oh, I'm reading this, that they're never believed.
yes, they are never believed. Even after 3 years, they're never believed. But the point is that when it comes to movable property, there is no relationship to 3 years. 3 years is not a thing with movable property. 1 day is a thing with a normal person. Exactly.
But Blackstone usually gives you a ticket that says after 30 days.
Yes, so that 100%, and that.
The mission is just saying they have 3.
But they have. I will note that some of these laws can be undone through contract. So we're talking about situations where there is no contract. So, okay. All right.
Well, what's the sense of the Rashbam? I'm having this Shatonim Lakoach Hu B'yadi. That
right, exactly. So all right, we'll go through
I read the rest of it. I understand just those last few words.
Right. So the point is that the worker is claiming that he purchased the item that he was working on.
Right. That's what I thought. That's what I thought I said. That's what.
And we're going to say Ein Lahem Chazaka. So let's take a look at the beginning of that Rashbam. The next
years later.
Right, however long later. V'lo b'cheskas shalosh shanim, Myri. When it comes to the umanin, the craftsman, we're not talking about a chazaka of 3 years. Distam uman lo shayach metaltalin. That when we talk about a craftsman, we're only talking about movable property. V'cheskas shalosh shanim lo namra el b'makarke. When we talk about a 3-year chazaka, that's always about land. Aval b'metaltali mishahu muchsak b'shel chaberu. When it comes to movable property, if somebody's holding something that belongs to his friend, afilu sha'achas, even for 1 hour, even for 1 minute, sha'anu roim sheyotzim mitachas yado. We saw that it went out from under his hand, and so aval pi sheyesh lechaberu edim shahayashalo. Even though I have witnesses that say these tefillin belong to me, and historically, neman zeh hamuchsak. If now James is holding my tefillin, he'll be believed, lomar, to say, lakuachu biyadi, that is distam lokeach metaltalin mechaveru below edim, because people sell things all the time without witnesses. Who koneh, and he'll purchase it. Below shtar, and without any kind of contract. Except with an exception, that there is an exception for things that are borrowed and rented out. So I guess tefillin are sometimes loaned out. So maybe something like that, you wouldn't have the right to claim immediately, because I could say it's something that I loaned out, and so as a result, I would loan it out. But in general, the point is that if it's something that people don't loan out and don't rent out, well, then you would have the right to claim that it was something that you purchased right away. So we'll stop there in the Rashbam just because it is getting late. So let's continue on in the Mishnah.
So how do you prove that?
How do you prove
if I stole your
theft? I have to prove that you took it from me. That I have to have witnesses that saw you pick it up and take it away. Now you can still claim that I bought it, but now you'll have to bring proof that you bought it. That you'll have to bring witnesses that saw that you actually acquired it from me.
Only if you have witnesses.
No. If I have witnesses that saw that you just took it without then that would be sufficient for me to be able to get my property back from you. Because you would still need to show that was an that was based on an acquisition. Meaning, if I can show,
I have a chazaka.
Even though you have a chazaka, because now I've shown that you took it in a transaction that looked like a theft. Meaning, if I see if I'm not present and you come into this room and pick up my tefillin. So now the two witnesses, we'll say Mark and Lori, we'll ignore the issues of who can be witnesses for the moment, but Mark and Lori see you be witnesses, are witnesses to it, and they testify and say, we saw him just come in and pick it up. So now you'll actually need witnesses to say that you actually bought it.
In the absence of any witnesses.
But in the absence of any witnesses, then you're chazaka, you're holding it, you have a good chazaka. Meaning I need to do something in order to make you prove more than just the claim that you have, because not possession is 9/10 of the law. Almost 10. Well, I mean, for all intents and purposes, that's exactly right. Well, the 9/10 is that if I have witnesses that saw you take it, and not in the context of a transaction, well, then now all of a sudden you'll have to prove that there was a transaction. Okay, so lo ish chazaka b'nichse ishto. A man doesn't get a chazaka in his wife's property, meaning if he's there on the property, he can't say, well, my wife sold it to me. V'lo isha chazaka b'nichse bala, and similarly, a wife can't get a chazaka on her husband's property. V'lo la'av b'nichse aben, v'lo ben b'nichse av. Again, basic principle is that if you're expected to be there, we're not going to give you a chazaka. But medvarim amurim, where is this all talking about? B'machzik. We're talking about a situation where somebody is already holding the item, then we're going to say that there's no chazaka. Aval benosin matana, but when it comes to somebody who gives a present, va'achin shechalku, and now we're transforming our conversation to talk about a different kind of chazaka. Or when you talk about brothers who are dividing an estate, hamachzik b'nichse hager, or somebody who's trying to take possession of a convert who has passed away without any heirs. Na'al v'gadar uparatz kol shehu, if you lock or you fence in or you open a locked space or open a fenced space, even a little bit, harezu chazaka. Now you have a chazaka on the new piece of property that you are acquiring. So the point is that this Mishnah is highlighting three different kinds of chazaka. Now we're talking about the chazaka of how you take ownership of something. And the answer to that, when it comes to real property, is nal gadaru paratz, that you have to lock it, you fence it, or you open it to some extent. Okay, so now the Gemara comes and we have the following two alternative versions of the Mishnah. And that's going to get us started in the next conversation. We'll get to the two dots at the bottom of the page, and we will pick up from there tomorrow. So Avua de Shmuel v'Levi Tanu. And so Avua, the father of Shmuel, and Levi had our Mishnah say, Shutav ein lo chazaka. Partners don't get a chazaka. And they didn't have anything referencing a craftsman. V'kol shekain umam. But yet they said that you would certainly say that a craftsman doesn't get a chazaka. But Shmuel had our Mishnah as follows. Uman ein lo chazaka, and a craftsman doesn't get a chazaka. Aval shutav yesh lo chazaka, but a partner does get a chazaka. Va'az the Shmuel tamei, and Shmuel goes according to his reasoning, because the Amar Shmuel hashutafin machazikin ze'al zeh umeidin ze'al zeh v'nasim shomri sachar ze'al zeh. That according to Shmuel, when you have two partners who own a piece of property together, they do have the ability to get a chazaka against one another, and they can testify on behalf of one another, meaning that if I make a claim, if Mark and James are partners in a piece of property, and I make a claim against Mark, James has the ability to be a witness in testifying that it really belongs to Mark, even though James is Mark's partner. So you might have thought that James is nogea b'davar. He has some involvement in the matter. We're going to, according to this Shmuel statement, we're going to say that he can testify. And v'naseh shomri sachar l'selazeh. So again, we'll stick with James and Mark. If the property gets stolen when it's in James's possession, he will owe Mark the liability for Mark's share of the property, as if he was a paid watcher, meaning a paid watcher is liable for theft because you need to watch it well enough that it shouldn't be stolen from you. And so as a result, you would have to pay the value of the property. And why? Rashbam explains that because when Mark is holding the property, he is going to serve as a paid watcher to you. So essentially that exchange of being paid watchers for each other will treat you both as paid watchers. Will make you as if you're both paid watchers. Okay, so Rami le Rabbi Abba le Rav Yehuda. So Rabbi Abba said, one second, the following contradiction, he mentioned the following contradiction to Rabbi Yehuda, B'ma'arta debei Rav Zakai. And he said this in the cave of Rav Zakai. Now, this cave might have been a burial cave, in which case we're talking, according to the Hagos, Ya'avetz, that we're talking about a situation when the Jews were being persecuted, and so they were hiding even in burial caves. Or, according to the Bach, it should be Ma'atzarta, which is an olive press. But the bottom line is, wherever it was, this was the following conversation. Mi Amar Shmuel, shutav yesh lo chazaka. Does Shmuel really say that a partner can get a chazaka? Va'amar Shmuel shutav ki yoreh b'rshus dami. We say elsewhere that Shmuel says that a partner is like somebody who goes in with permission. And just as and lavla memra deshut of ein lo chazaka, and didn't that statement mean that that you don't get a chazaka? Again, because somebody who goes into your property with permission to go in there clearly doesn't get a chazaka for being there because he has permission to be there. So lo kashya, hadanachas lakula, hadanachas lapalga. No. So the question is when Shmuel says that a partner gets chazaka, that could be either with when it's talking about when the partner has all of the field or when the partner has half of the field. Amri lahai gisa, amri lahai gisa. And the point is that it's unclear which way to go. In one situation, the partner is taking the entire field. In the other situation, the partner is taking half of the field. And in one of those situations, we're going to say the partner gets a chazaka. And in the other situation, we're going to say that the partner does not get a chazaka. And we have an argument to make the distinction in either direction. What's the argument to make the distinction to say that only when you take the whole field, you get a chazaka? Well, ordinarily, partners each split the field. And so if one of the partners gets up and takes the entire field, so then that's a situation where we're going to say you would get a chazaka. On the other hand, maybe we are dealing with partnerships where it makes sense that they take turns. And if we're dealing with a partnership where it makes sense that they take turns, so then if one of them has the whole thing, we're not going to give him a chazaka. But if he takes a portion of the field and it indicates that they're separating their partnership, well, then we'll say that it would be that he would get a chazaka. So in that situation, because that would be a basis to say that he's doing something different. So Ravina answers the same contradiction. Again, one place Shmuel says that partners get a chazaka, and one place Shmuel says that partners don't get his chazaka by saying hava hadanachas lakula. Really, we're always talking about where the partner took the whole thing. The lo kasha hadaispa din chaluka v'hadaleispa din chaluka. The question is the field large enough that we would say that there would be a potential division? If the field is large enough for a potential division, well, then when one party takes the whole field, so then he's going to be able to get a chazaka. Because the point is that if we want to divide it, there's an easy way to divide it. We can just divide it. We split the field. And so the fact that you took the whole field, I need for 3 years without my complaining, exactly, you're going to get a chazaka. But hadaleispa din chaluka. But when it's too small to actually divide it up, well, then we're going to say that, of course, we're allowing one person to be in there for a number of years, because that's the way the structure is set up. You can't have a division. It doesn't make sense to do a division. Okay. So now that
if these people are two partners, don't each of them own everything together so that they can interchange? They work in business together. So each one essentially has 50% of the business or 100% of the business, depending on
each one owns 50% of the business. Now, it could be, again, there are lots of ways to think about partnerships, but one way to think about partnership is that they own 50% that is separate, or you could own 50% that is sort of totally intermingled.
Right.
But the bottom line is they each own 50%, and according to Ravina, the point is that if one of them takes the whole thing, and it was something that you could have split, then we're going to say that if he now says that I bought your half from you, we're going to believe him. 3 years, exactly. I bought your half from you 3 years ago, we're going to believe you. But if in fact the field is so small that each one has to be on the field individually, well, then maybe we said that you could have it for 3 years. So
I think once he buys half the field, it's no longer a partnership. He's bought the other person's ownership.
That's what he's claiming. He's claiming that. But the other guy is saying, I never sold you my half of the partnership. So the question is do we say that the fact that he was there for 3 years provides a chazaka that supports his claim? Right? One claims that he bought the other guy's half. The other claims that he didn't sell it. And so now the question is does his presence there for 3 years serve as any evidence? Now, if in fact the field is so small that you
No, I
couldn't
understand
possibly
that, but it
divide it,
seems like
so then we're going to say that's not good evidence. But if the field is so large that they could have divided it if they really wanted to go their separate ways, well, then the
Right.
fact that one of them has been in it for 3 years, we're going to say that that shows that he bought the other guy's
It
house.
just seems there's almost a contradiction in terms. Once he bought it, even 3 years ago, the partnership was dissolved.
Remember, there's a debate. Only one says that he bought it. The other guy says, I never sold it. The one guy says there's still a partnership. One guy says there's not a partnership. So the
Okay.
question is who's the evidence
Okay.
supporting?
Okay.
So now we're going to go back to Shmuel's statement that Gufa, Amar Shmuel Shutav Kiyorid Bershustami. We said that a Shutav, a partner, is as if he goes into the possession with permission, into the property with permission. So my Kamashmalan, what is this teaching us? Because after all, Shutafut ein lo chazaka, if you're teaching us just that a partner doesn't get a chazaka, lema Shutav ein lo chazaka. He could have just said a Shutav doesn't get a chazaka. So Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba Baravua, Lomar Shenotel B'Sheva Hamagia Liksafayim. This is teaching us that if one partner goes in without permission into the partner field and plants there, he is going to be able to get the produce he's going to be able to get the produce that reaches his shoulders, meaning that he will get to take from the best. That even though the field is not usually used for planting trees, if he plants trees there and it does, and they produce and they have a good produce, well, then he is going to be able to take away those results, even though he didn't have permission. And now, and we have elsewhere.
What do you have? He doesn't have
in
permission.
the Gemara
If
in
they're
Bava,
partners, don't they have permission to use?
No, it's my 3
well,
years.
that's no. The point is that you're exactly right. We're going to treat the person as if they had permission. That's exactly what Shmuel is saying. That when we say that the shoot of kiyorid bershustami is even if the guy didn't have permission, because maybe again it was the other partner's 3 years, but if the other guy, if the person whose year it wasn't, goes into the field and does the work on the field, we're going to enable him to collect as if he was a full-fledged partner. Now, and that is true, even though if I were to go into your field and do the same thing, if it was not, according to Shmuel, if it was not a field that was set up for trees, and I ended up planting trees there, and I obviously must have transferred grown trees so that it's not subject to Orla. The point is that I would have the benefit, I would have the lesser of either the amount of investment that I gave or the profits that are associated with it, whichever is less. And so the point is that limitation that exists when I go into your field does not exist when there are two partners, even if the partner is going out of order in terms of his term.
Well, where do you get this from less? Who's going into the field to get less of what?
If I go into your field and we're not partners.
Oh, we're not partners. Okay.
And we're not partners. And I plant something that is not supposed to be planted in your field, right? Because your field is set up for grain, and I plant some trees there. Right. And now I say to you, listen, you owe me the money because of that. You only have to pay me the lesser of my investment or the profits, whichever is less. And so as a result, I may, because I get the lesser hand because I didn't do what I'm supposed to do. But if we were partners and I were to do the same thing, you would have to give me just like a sharecropper. You would have to treat me like a full-fledged sharecropper as opposed to somebody who went in without permission. So that is the bottom line. Now, Shmuel also said, we're going to now go back to Shmuel's earlier statement, and he said that that partners can testify against one another. What exactly did he mean by that? Well, for that, please stay tuned to tomorrow's daf. Have a great day, everybody.
How was dinner last night in
It was, we had